Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So what we have here today is a Democratic Party that is in crisis. And Democratic leaders, they're now panicking because Zohran Mamdani in New York is on a crusade to elect as many socialists as possible to Congress. And Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader for the Democrats in the House, isn't liking what's going on. And a recent poll is showing that these candidates is a problem for Democrats. Let us get into it by starting with this reporting explaining exactly what is going on with the socialist candidates that Zohran Mamdani is trying to get elected. Play clip.
The battle for the future of House Democrats playing out in New York. Just days before New York City voters head to the polls, Mayor Zohran Mamdani is throwing his weight behind a new wave of Democratic socialist candidates.
Hey, John. Well, New York's Mayor Zohran Mamdani is backing three candidates in three different New York congressional races ahead of Tuesday's primary. The most controversial Mamdani pick, though, is Democratic Socialist Darya-Lisa Avila Chevalier. She's trying to unseat five-term Democratic Congressman Adriano Espaillat. She's for abolishing prisons and ICE and says all deportations, even for convicted criminals, are wrong. She's also apologized for her now deleted tweets, like this one where she said she wipes her hands with the American flag, or another one where she says F the police while wearing a defund police mask. In a recent interview, Avila Chevalier says she thinks if Mamdani's three picks, including her, Democratic Socialist Claire Valdez, and former DSA member Brad Lander win, it would send a message nationwide that Mamdani wasn't a flash in the pan. Quote, I think if we can prove that this wasn't a fluke, that we are building the power of Democratic Socialists here in New York, and we are doing that at a federal level, I think that will be the domino for so many other cities and states across the country. We know that socialism beats fascism.
As you can see, the Democratic Party is no longer what it used to be. The Democratic Party has been hijacked by socialists, and Zohran Mamdani is leading this effort to elect a whole bunch of socialists to get them into Congress. And this is causing a huge issue with the current minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries. And here we have an article explaining exactly what's going on. And the article explains that two competitive New York City congressional primaries are pitting Zohran Mamdani against House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in a battle for the political future of the nation's largest city. I would say that it's not limited to just New York City, it is nationwide. And these two congressional primaries are set to be held on Tuesday, and they're seen as proxy wars between Mamdani's progressive movements and the establishment led by Hakeem Jeffries. And the two are not natural political allies. While Mamdani identifies as a Democrat socialist, Jeffries has never aligned himself with the movement. In fact, he has been quite critical of the DSA. And if you don't know what the DSA is, it's basically the Democratic Socialist of America. And they were the ones that were responsible for getting Zohran Mamdani elected as New York City mayor. And the DSA is working on getting a whole bunch of socialists across the country elected. And one of the most recent candidate that they've been working on is Janice Lois George from DC, the DC mayoral candidate, and she's probably about more than likely going to become the actual mayor for Washington, D.C. A socialist in Washington, D.C. It is crazy. And another one in California as well, L.A., Nithya Raman. And she's going to be facing Mayor Karen Bass, who's incompetent, both of them. At that point, LA is cooked. But that's basically what's going on across the country with all these socialists and the DSA as well. And here we have a poll that was recently released that's proving that these socialist candidates, they're spelling trouble for the Democrat Party, especially incumbents. Let us watch this, and then we'll talk about some of the ridiculous policies that these socialist candidates are offering. Play clip.
When we talk about Democratic socialists, how are they viewed inside the Democratic Party?
Yeah, you mentioned New York, you mentioned Vermont. Obviously, there's the D.C. mayor. We've seen it in Pennsylvania as well. The Democratic Socialists seem to be doing considerably better than they used to be, and they have the chance to knock off, in fact, Democratic incumbents in Congress. And part of the reason for that, why we're seeing these Democratic Socialists having such good chances or outright winning nominations, is take a look here. Net favorability among Dems. Democratic Socialists of America, look at that. a plus 17-point net favorability rating among Democrats. That is actually better. That is better than how congressional Democrats are viewed by Democrats at just plus 4 points. So no wonder that Democratic Socialists have such a good chance, because simply put, they are a better brand at this point than Democrats in Congress.
As you can see, socialism is on the rise in America, especially among Democrats. And Democratic leaders like Hakeem, Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, the rest of them, they're struggling to contain this thing that they created. Because socialism on paper, it sounds good, but in reality, at least it just doesn't work in the long term. And here we have Bernie Sanders, who's the grandfather of socialism in America, or I call him that, the grandfather of socialism, because he's been in Congress for almost 100 years. He's like 200 years old. And he recently did a rally where he's trying to push this wealth tax. And take a look at this.
A rally pushing his wealth tax, or as he calls it, the Make Billionaires Pay Their Fair Share Act. The legislation would target over 900 billionaires in the U.S. and force them to pay an additional 5% annual tax.
And what the American people understand is the time is long overdue for the wealthiest people in this country to start paying their fair share of taxes. And I want to give you an example. Give me a moment here to give you an example of what this inequality is all about. I propose and introduce legislation to establish a 5% annual wealth tax on the less than 1,000 billionaires in this country. 938 billionaires who are worth over $8 trillion. And here is the irony, for better or for worse. If this legislation would pass tomorrow, Elon Musk would pay $39 billion more in taxes, leaving him, I know this is tough for Elon, with just $737 billion in which to survive.
That was Bernie Sanders, who's been around for a very long time pushing his socialist ideals. And I'm a fan of certain social programs, but at the end of the day, we just cannot depend on the government for everything. We just cannot. It's just not sustainable. It's just not going to work. And as I mentioned before, all these social programs, they sound good on paper, and they start with the billionaires, then they go down to the multimillionaires, and next thing you know, you're the ones that's paying for all these different things, all these different social programs. Because look at majority of the social programs that we have. Guess who's paying for all of that? It's regular working class folks. Because yeah, it sounds good. That is how they sell it to the American people. And next thing you know, it's going to be me and you that's paying for all these different things. So we don't need more taxes. We don't need more social programs. What we need are more opportunities. And here we have Rokana from out of California calling for more taxes in order to pay off student loans for folks who took out a debt that they cannot pay for, and they want more taxes to pay for these things. You just cannot make it up. Play clip.
I took out a lot of student loans. I've done well. They shouldn't forgive student loans for people like me. But if you're working class, you're first in your family to go to college, you have all this debt, and then you're paying off your debt until you're 50 or 60 and can't get a house, we can pay off that debt. And you know how we pay for it? Tax Elon Musk. Tax the billionaires. You're not taxing the blue collar.
Here's the thing. I like to think about things logically. You're telling me that you took out hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to a school that you didn't have to go to. You essentially chose to study gender studies or, basket weaving underwater, whatever, at this fancy school. And now you cannot pay for that. And now politicians, what they're saying, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to tax people that are working for their money to pay for your responsibility as a grown-up. How does that even make sense at all? I think a better plan would be to figure out how did these companies exploited young adults when they were trying to go to school. I think that is a more appropriate action rather than saying, well, we're going to forgive the debt or we're going to tax other people. And that brings us to the end of this video. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below in regards to the socialists and their policies. Also, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.